I'm the Communications and Engagement Lead at Earth Lab, and I will be your moderator for the next hour. And I want to thank my colleague Lindsay for your amazing work in helping us plan this event. So our series was formed to shed light on the difficulties and the opportunities of working together towards a common goal when you come from different backgrounds, different fields, communities, sectors, or geographies. Speaking of where people are located, we at Earth Lab and at the University of Washington recognize that we are on the land where numerous tribal communities have lived since time immemorial. We acknowledge the Coast Salish people of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. If you are not joining us from this region, we encourage you to learn about the land you are on here at nativeland.ca. So we would like to remind everyone that this event will be recorded and will be made available on our Earth Lab website to reference later. Therefore, in accordance with the University of Washington privacy rules, please keep yourself muted during the event and keep your video off. We do have time available for Q&A, so we encourage you to ask your questions during the presentation and panel discussion using the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Please type your questions and we will try to answer all of them. So now what you are all here for, I'd like to introduce you all to our presenters today who are going to discuss collaborating for clean tech. You'll hear from Lauren Brohawn, Assistant Director at the Foster School's Buerk Center for Entrepreneurship, Michael Pomfret, Managing Director of the Washington Clean Energy Testbeds, which is run by the UW Clean Energy Institute, and Mel Clark, CEO of the Cleantech Alliance. So thank you all for joining us today. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and let Lauren start this off with a prompt. Please share your role in collaborating in clean tech, anything exciting you're working on now, and how you know these lovely people on this panel and any projects you've worked with them. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Lindsay, Constance, and Earth Lab for having us. I am going to share my screen. I'll do that real quick over here. Okay. So I will get to your prompts. They're kind of woven into just a few slides that I have today. I know that we have a lot of attendees in the audience today who have some connection already to the University of Washington. So you're most likely well aware that UW is an innovation hub. And the Buerk Center for Entrepreneurship, which I work with, we specifically focus on students. And so all that we do surrounds supporting students on their journey, whether that's as an entrepreneur or in the clean tech space. And so my first brief example of collaboration today has to do with collaborating with other entities on campus around innovation. And so I'll be dropping a link in the chat in just a little bit, but there is now a new innovation imperative website, which tries to pull together as many innovative groups and programs and opportunities in one spot. And this just launched, I believe, in the fall. And so I'm sure there are groups on campus that we're still needing to discover and connect with. So I will drop that in just a moment. So a little bit more about the Buerk Center specifically. Again, we serve students, and we do that through providing mentorship opportunities, through our 3 competitions, through courses, both for undergrad students and graduate students. We have an Accelerator program, and through our competitions and Accelerator, there's funding and prize money. And so in terms of our role within the clean tech kind of space, I specifically manage the Alaska Airlines Environmental Innovation Challenge. And so we work closely with Michael Pomfret at the Washington Clean Energy Testbeds, as well as the Clean Energy Institute at large, to connect with potential mentors for our students, as well as judges who will help serve and play a role in our annual competition, as well as events and cross promotion. So making sure that not only our students, but the judges and industry experts in our community and our network are aware of these great programs that the Testbeds puts on. And similarly with the Cleantech Alliance, our main connections are with judges and mentors, and then also playing a role in this larger pipeline of clean tech professionals, entrepreneurs. And so there might be a really awesome team or many within the Alaska Airlines Environmental Innovation Challenge that would be a great fit to maybe work with those in the test beds or go on into the Cleantech Alliance Accelerator program. So there's a lot of communication that happens amongst the three of us in terms of, again, events, judges and industry experts, and keeping teams apprised of opportunities to move their idea along beyond their time in the University of Washington. So I think I covered all of your prompts. I think one last thing that I wanted to mention in terms of how we've worked together. Over the summer, there was an opportunity to provide data for a white paper as part of the Wells Fargo IN2 channel partner program. And so Michael provided some data to contribute to that white paper along with the Buerk Center. And I'll include a link in the chat on that as well. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Michael.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you to Earth Lab for inviting me to be a part of this. Looking forward to introducing everybody to the test beds and our role in the clean energy and clean tech ecosystem. And as the title of my slide suggests, we're looking at the future. So we're not looking for impact that's just going to happen now, but how can we drive a clean energy and clean tech future? And the start of this was the Clean Energy Institute, which was founded back in 2013, based off of some historic research strengths at the university, namely solar energy and battery materials and devices. And then as you have more DC current intermittent power coming onto the grid that is operated in a distributed way as opposed to a centralized power plant model, you have to worry about how the grid functions with the proliferation of those devices. And so the Clean Energy Institute is an academic institute, right? Its members are faculty from across the university, primarily engineering and arts and sciences, but also, as you'll hear, we work with folks at the Buerk Center and Foster Business School and a few other groups as well. So there's an opportunity for research fellows. They operate a due diligence program with E8, which is an angel investment group, and the people who are acting as those fellows are UW grad students, and as well as a policy fellowship that they operate. So really trying to touch not just on the STEM aspects of clean tech and clean energy innovation, but sort of a holistic approach to what needs to get done for these innovations to have a true impact. And part of that is the test beds, right? So the test beds were founded a few years later with money from specifically from the Department of Commerce, as well as Washington Research Foundation and a couple of other donors. And as you might imagine, considering we're coming out of CEI, our research interests, our technology interests are much the same. But with that money from the State Department of Commerce, we really are charged with having one foot in industry, right? Supporting the innovation development ecosystem outside of what's going on at the university. And so we're open access. You do have to pay for access, but anybody can come in. And over the course of the first 4 years or so that we've been open, we've worked with 53 different institutions, which obviously includes UW, other colleges, and then plenty of folks from industry, including something like, I think 35 different clean tech focused companies. We're able to do this through that pay-as-you-go model because people, by paying those rates, are not being subsidized by the university, so they get to retain all their intellectual property. And it's a mechanism that allows for real growth and real interest from private companies. They don't have to worry about IP entanglement. And then we have expert staff, so you're not working with students or postdocs or professors that might have other responsibilities. You're working with scientists and engineers that have had experience in industry working on these types of technologies and are now supporting other groups doing that development. And I think in just to give you a quick overview of the lab, I mean, one slide cannot do justice for our facilities. So please contact me if you'd like to learn more about the test beds and our technology. But we're really trying to go from invention at what you would traditionally think of as the university scale, right? Lab benches, nanoparticle synthesis. If you build a device, maybe it's the size of a thumbnail. And how do we take those technologies that have gotten these researchers, high profile publications, maybe a patent, and how do we actually have a market impact with them? And so we try to sort of shepherd people from that research scale through prototyping and some pilot commercial scale manufacturing to actually integrating their systems onto a simulated grid. And I think inherent in all this is the fact that we exist because there's room to grow, and this ecosystem needs nurturing, and there's no way that we could do this alone. And so you can see a list of partners on the left side of the screen here, and I've highlighted, of course, the Buerk Center and the Cleantech Alliance, and this is only, I would say, a partial list of the people that we interact with. So Lauren covered a lot of how we interact with the Buerk Center. I think it's also through Lauren I was introduced to the Student Technology Showcase as well. So that's students who typically probably are building up towards Alaska Innovation Challenge, and we sort of try to get early contacts with them and help them as soon as possible. And then through the Cleantech Alliance, we've partnered with the Cascadia Cleantech Accelerator essentially since the test beds opened their doors as a prototyping resource for companies that are going through the accelerator. We are members of the Cleantech Alliance and support them through the Cleantech Showcase and Energy Leadership Summit. Amazing two-way networking going on at both of those events. And then just last week finished up writing a grant with Rochelle at the Cleantech Alliance, as well as partners at Virtue Lab, for the potential to really grow that Cascadia Accelerator and diversify the programs and try to impact even more people than we already do. So there's a lot more I can say. I'll stop there. If you want to reach out, there's my email address. Feel free to check out our website, and we do tweet every once in a while as well. And looking forward to the discussion. So with that, I will kick it over to Mel.
Thanks, Michael. Well, going third, I think you've already heard how we collaborate with the other two organizations. Give me just a second to get my screen share going here, and I'll talk a little bit more about other things Cleantech Alliance does across the ecosystem. We work with companies from brand new emerging startups and technologies coming out of the lab all the way through multinational corporations such as Corning and Boeing across the sphere of cleantech applications, innovations, and industry sectors. We have over 1,100 member companies in a wide variety of sectors. And when we have an event where those companies and organizations are mixing, it makes for some pretty great collaborative opportunities. We do educational networking events, advocacy, focus on jobs and research into state of the sector or jobs, as well as commercialization programs. And it's definitely our commercialization programming where we intersect most closely with both of the other organizations here today. We work to help our members advance clean technologies, take things out of the laboratory, and begin to commercialize and distribute those. Our final goal is to advance the pace of technology adoption for those companies and help them foster innovation. Michael spoke to the Cascadia Cleantech Accelerator, and that is a program that's a partnership between Virtue Lab and the Cleantech Alliance, with a lot of different partners among the ecosystem that come in, and then we rely heavily on mentors and folks at our various member companies donating and giving their time to help new and emerging companies. We have additional Accelerator and business development programming coming this year. Michael spoke already to the grant that we've just finished submitting to expand some programming, and we're going to be standing up a new pitch prize in collaboration with Foresight, which is a partner out of British Columbia, where we're bringing our Accelerator alumni back for an additional pitch and a where are they now kind of opportunity. So there's a lot that we do in that space. I think the emphasis here is that every one of these programs is collaborative in nature. We're not out there going it by ourselves. We're working with a lot of different organizations, research institutions, funders, and partners to help make this programming possible and bring the biggest benefit to the member companies possible. And I wanted to highlight one collaboration in particular that we saw happen over the last year and a half. One of our taglines is that we're about making connections that make a difference. Everything we're doing is trying to be collaborative and bringing different folks together to advance their business goals and their objectives. One interesting highlight is Impact Bioenergy. They're a Clean Energy Fund Award winner, and they create portable bioenergy systems and participate in the circular economy. And they have these shipping container modules. That blue object there is a shipping container, and they take their technology and they scale it in a size they can put it right on site for their customers. And they were presenting at the Innovation Showcase. And sitting in the audience was the new CEO for Regenerated Textiles. And he wanted to do a micro recycling for fabric waste, for textile waste, and make that sector greener and participate in the circular economy. And he had his concept and his idea and his technology, and he didn't know how he was going to deploy it. And he listened to a presentation from Impact Bioenergy and said, aha, we can put it in a shipping container and deliver it on site. And Impact Bioenergy was really generous with their time and sat down with him and reviewed it with him and what they're doing. And they just created that networking opportunity that helped Zaylan, the CEO for this company, take his concept, find a way to deploy it and get it out on site. And he's actually just finished coming through the Cascadia Cleantech Accelerator this year. So it's a really interesting example of how the ecosystem of the educational event, the networking event, listening to people present on topics and on industries that maybe aren't exactly where you're working still creates opportunity to grow your technology into a commercializable business. So that's my short and sweet version of the presentation, but a really interesting real-world example of how some of the collaborations do indeed come together as we bring folks from different industries into the same room for some pretty fascinating conversations.
All right, thank you all so much. I already feel like I learned a lot. So now we are moving on to our panel discussion, and everyone in the audience, please add your questions to the chat. I do have a couple questions to start us off though, and we like to ask each of our Lunch and Learn presenters about the same questions each time to learn about the similarities and differences between these kinds of collaborations. So you touched on this first question, but let's dig a little bit deeper. Why does clean tech require collaboration across sectors, and who has a role to play in clean tech? And anyone who wants to jump in can do so.
I think one reason that we need a really connected ecosystem to support our clean tech companies is we do see that the barriers to commercialization and adoption for a clean technology company tends to be bigger. There are more hoops to jump through. There's a longer time to prove the technology. We're in an environment where we think, oh, tech startup, angel investors, lots of funding. That must be easy, but that's really heavily on the ones and zeros technology, where there's this huge pathway to support and there's nothing to go build and test and take places and implement. So the rollout for software and what the layperson might expect is a real different timeline than it would be for clean technology, where we're solving new technology, new problems with new technologies in new ways. And the more supportive and tightly knit fabric of connected folks supporting that implementation helps to overcome some of those barriers. We know it's a longer lead time for many clean technology companies than it would be for a high-tech company.
Yeah, I'll jump in there too. I think speaking about Seattle specifically and the challenges that we face, which can be summed up. We had a big European company, Enel, right, based in Italy. They're one of the world's largest energy companies. They had somebody come over, tour the test beds, said he loved it, but also said he would never be able to sell Seattle to Rome because they know about the Bay Area, they know about Boston, and the reason for that is a few things. You have innovative research institutions in both of those locations. You have money in both those locations that's focused on solving these specific problems, and there are resources there. And I think, UW is one of the most innovative universities in the world. Has held that ranking now for quite a few years, and a large part of the a lot of that is due to the work that the Buerk Center does and Foster Business School does. But then also the big machinery around health sciences, computer sciences, and CEI is relatively young, right? So when I said there was a lot of work to do, we're trying to promote innovation, from lab to market, in a city that hasn't historically, or at least not as historically as some of the other technology sectors, supported that. And so how do we get their attention? I think the test beds were founded based off of a few reports that came out that said, aside from money, because everybody needs money, hardware investors specifically are looking for resources that allow them to defer some of their capital and get access to the equipment that they need and some of the testing and validation they need. All that stuff is really expensive. And so that's where we come in. And I think the other aspect of that is the money, right? Getting the attention of investors. It's to Mel's point. We have Madrona here in Seattle. They will really only look at software innovation, and because of the expense, if we can defer some of those expenses and have resources like the test beds, like JC Dream, which is another group we didn't even mention, which is a state organization for the development of earth abundant materials, and a large part of that is energy sciences. Then we can start to attract investors, and I think E8 Angels has done a great job of that. So that's the role the investors play. And then the last thing I want to say, and then I'll stop talking because there are other people on the panel, is the consumer plays a huge role. And the example, I was just talking about this last week with somebody else, is what we just went through in the Republican administration that just happened, where they're trying to prop up coal, right? So who's going to buy coal? Why didn't coal come back? And we can look just across the lake at Microsoft, who's building all these power-hungry data centers. But when they're doing so, they are insisting that the utilities and the locations where they are building these data centers install X amount of megawatts to gigawatts of solar, so that they're not using dirty energy. And that reason for that is they have to report back to their customers who won't buy Microsoft products unless there's a low carbon footprint. And so, aside from all the work that the three of us in the panel are doing, there's a lot that you guys can do to really push what would otherwise be in a moral market. Right?
And I'll just add two quick things. One is just, the role of the students, for one, kind of connecting to what Michael was just saying about the consumer, students, current students, and the students that we're going to see, for the next several generations, they are, craving and demanding that things are clean and more sustainable. And so, they're going to be driving, some of this. And then also in terms of who has a role in it, from the student side, we really try and build awareness amongst all departments that, we need the business student, we need the engineer, we need the communications major, we need, the liberal arts student, arts, etc., to all work together on these problems. And so while obviously there's like a huge technology side to all of this, we do need those other skill sets. And so again, trying to build awareness amongst students, whether it's through these various events, et cetera, kind of opens their eyes to for them to be able to see maybe where they themselves can fit into this picture.
Great, thank you. And yeah, thanks for mentioning students. I know that that's a big audience for us here as well. And we've heard that a lot too at Earth Lab, the demand from students to do more collaborating and just, figure it out. So what do you think makes clean tech collaborations successful? Could you share an example? For instance, did it take a certain kind of meeting structure or socializing, getting to know one another, or what? I'm really curious if you have a really good example of a successful collaboration and how you figured that out.
I'll just start off just thinking about the amazing opportunities that the Cleantech Alliance offers. They've just become these annual events, right? Like I might have the namings wrong, but for me, it was like this summer schmooze fest, and the, Cleantech showcase. I mean, those are, because we know that they're happening every year, typically, I know that I can go and hear kind of the latest and greatest technologies. I can connect with potential judges and colleagues. And so I think there's something to be said about having those consistent opportunities to engage with people.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, I think my answer to that question is the Cleantech Alliance. From my point of view, I mean, they're responsible for the clean tech incubator in the region, being operating in Washington in partnership with Virtue Lab, who handles the Oregon part of it. So, they have such a large geographic reach across a number of sectors. There really is no better networking to be done, which, and I guess more broadly, I would just say showing up is what makes these things successful. Like taking the time to be a judge at the Alaska Innovation Challenge has always been worth the effort and worth the time for me. Meeting new company or new students with new ideas and potentially new companies coming out. Going to the mentor mixer for the Cleantech Alliance or for the Cleantech Accelerator. And other events like E8 has monthly meetings, and you do start to see a lot of the same people, but then you understand the reason you're seeing them is because they're so passionate and supportive, and it really is kind of a collegial group. And sure, there's competition, but I think those major organizations I interact with understand that everyone needs to be working together. And I think that attitude has been, for somebody who's not a Seattle native, that attitude has been really impressive for me working here in the city.
One of the things that I've found, I'm newer in my role with the Cleantech Alliance. I've been here for less than a year now. But what I've really found is our board and our executive committee and our mentors and our leaders are all very generous with their time. They're all very willing to share. They're all very willing to coach. They're all very willing to get in the weeds with an entrepreneur and help nudge their startup to a more commercializable direction. It's great, you've got this lofty idea. No one's going to buy that. How can we pivot? How can we adjust? How can we help get the right people in the room with you to move you forward? And that's just their baseline mindset. And it's very, very refreshing. It's kind of wonderful to turn on my computer and go to work every day, knowing that the people I'm talking to are actually honestly willing to give you an hour of their time and help you out. And that's what I see, in the 7 hours a day I'm on Zoom in meetings, is that they're all very, very sharing and giving. Another really specific example of a collaboration that's very interesting, and it ties back to the data centers, our board, and it ties into the students, and it ties into the interdisciplinary nature of clean tech, is that students from a wide array of disciplines are going to be working for clean tech companies. And our board vice chair is an entomologist. She's a bug scientist. But she's raising bugs for the animal feed market and likely for the future for the human food market. So we're bringing in agriculture, we're bringing in bugs. And why is it clean tech? She's positioning her bug farms on data centers and using their waste heat to grow the bugs. So the interdisciplinary nature of that just delights my soul, the number of disciplines that have to come together to make that happen. Very relevant for Washington State, very relevant for circular economy, very relevant for making ag tech a clean technology. And it's just a wonderful juxtaposition of so many fields. And so if you're not in a traditional clean tech or energy sector, don't worry, there's room for you in the clean tech economy. And in fact, there's probably a company out there that needs exactly what you're studying.
Wow, I've heard of eating bugs, but I haven't heard of that before. That's really exciting. I'm so glad there are a lot of smart people out there working on this. So it sounds like all of you have been in this clean tech industry for different amounts of time. We're going to pivot our question to get a little more personal now. How has working in clean tech changed you, either personally or professionally? Either how has it changed how you perceive other industries, or has anything surprised you?
Well, I can go first since I anticipated half of that question. I've been in nonprofits for about 20 years. My degree is actually in interdisciplinary arts and sciences, which means I don't have a specialty and I don't have a focus. It's really a degree in writing across the curriculum. And it really lined me up to be a generalist. I've worked in different nonprofits in wildly different market sectors. I industry hopped very completely in my last transition. I was working in youth sports. And the company that I highlighted in my slide deck that's doing the textile recycling was actually one of my primary vendors making jerseys for our players. And he started a new company, was moving into clean tech. And he saw my LinkedIn that I changed jobs and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And we started talking, and he started talking about this idea he had. And I recruited him in to apply for our accelerator, and it sped up the pace of his company. He didn't even know there was a clean tech accelerator he could benefit from. So it's been fascinating that when we talk about how interdisciplinary clean tech is, one of my first things I accomplished on the way in the door was to pick up a startup and bring them with me into the ecosystem. How has it changed me? It's aligned, my personal values and my deep-seated belief that we all need to be working harder to advocate for climate change mitigation and new solutions. And it's taken what was a personal passion and now it's made it my profession. And it's been wonderful. I hear we have conferences and in-person events and networking opportunities and schmooze fests and block parties, but I haven't been to anything yet. So far, to me, clean tech is a 100% virtual world. I have not yet sat down with my staff in person. So for me, the change has been I've learned to get really collaborative through a little box on the screen.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer to this question. I've worked in clean tech my whole career, fortunately, with the exception of a little blip when I first came to Seattle. I will say, my career prior to coming to Seattle was as a scientist in the lab, sort of nose down in beakers and test tubes, and you're worried about publishing, you're worried about getting scooped who your competition is and being the first person to get the patent out or get a paper out. And one thing that working here in this community has really highlighted for me is you do need to be driven to find that the next great thing, but also understanding the role that you play in the bigger ecosystem and introducing a level of selflessness to it. I guess it doesn't get much more personal than that. Being a part of this collaborative community with all the groups I listed on my slides, not just the Cleantech Alliance and the Buerk Center and other people at UW. I don't think I would approach a collaboration in the future the same way if somebody wasn't trying to support the community. I guess I'll just leave it at that. And I guess that is also the surprise, right? In the sort of dog eat dog competitive world in the lab, that hadn't really gotten across to me. So
I'll kind of pick up on some of your points, Michael. I think so. My background is mostly in environmental nonprofits. and then kind of transitioning that into higher education, but specifically with the Buerk Center for Entrepreneurship, immersing myself more in the business side of things, was kind of the new piece to my path. And so I think, one thing that maybe shouldn't be surprising, but was maybe more refreshing, was just seeing more resources wanting to be shared. So not every group has, funding to spread, but they are, wanting to, make sure that the opportunity to get funding or to connect with, people, is there. And so I think that connection piece and sharing of resources stood out to me. And then, Michael touched on this kind of, community aspect and giving back. And that just reminds me of a company that I think has touched all, 3 of our groups, which is Membrion. And, the founder, Greg, he came through some of the Buerk Center programs, our Accelerator program, competitions, worked with the Testbeds, worked with the Cleantech Alliance, and then gives back. And so he, is always willing to connect with students, be a judge. And that is just, I guess, just another pleasant surprise to just see that giving back component. And people, I think because we all have this bigger connected goal, for environmental impact and change, that we know that it takes all of us working together in different capacities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we have one more question from the panel before we get to guest questions. So how has COVID changed this space over the last year beyond meeting virtually? What has the impact been on this work?
I'll share one thing that comes to mind. It's related a little bit more to just the entrepreneurial work that I do. But one thing that's emerged that's been really a positive thing in the virtual nature of everything is we've started holding monthly meetings with regional entrepreneurship centers. And in the past, it would be something where, maybe we would try and get in the car and make a several-day trip to different colleges and universities in the region and meet with people, which definitely, has its benefits. But being able to now have a regular meeting, that would be maybe a once a year thing or once every other year. And this year we've been, a couple times a quarter or monthly, being able to connect with other people doing similar work to share, right, lessons learned, what's working, what's coming up that we can share with students. And so that's something that I think will carry on, beyond these times.
We're also seeing just a geographic expansion. It's made collaboration easier, gone from possibility to now feeling natural with companies focusing on clean tech work. We have an emerging chapter in Idaho. And so we're finding it's easier to collaborate with them rather than the planned fly in for a launch. Now it's 3 and 4 times a month where we're connecting deeply with our member companies in that area. It's really strengthened our partnership with the Canadian consulate here in Seattle, and she's connecting us across the Canadian government. So Quebec and their consul, which is based out of LA, has just joined as members, and we're going to see representation from their emerging technology and member companies and getting exposure and that cross-pollination, and it's serving to grow those opportunities. I think our members are also keenly aware that the shift to online for the majority of your work is reducing their carbon footprint. And I think we're going to see a pressure to not put everything back in person just because we can. And finally, I think it's just creating just an ease. It's easier to say yes to speak at something or to connect with someone or to give them some of your time when you don't have to get in your car and drive somewhere to make it happen. And so it's adding a little bit of a frantic pace to some of our members feel in their calendars, but they also feel like they're making more connections. Certainly as I onboarded, I was able to meet with every one of our board members who wanted a one-on-one meeting with me in a dramatically faster time frame than I could have been if I was driving and flying to accomplish all of that. So I feel like in some small ways, it's making us a little more effective.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that. I will say we had a recent conversation with the incubator at Oak Ridge National Lab in Tennessee, and prior to the pandemic, a good chunk of that conversation would have been, well, you're in Seattle and we're in Tennessee, so like, how much can you really help us? And with the pandemic just being inherent now in that conversation, we're able to get right into like the companies that were active in the incubator that we might be able to help, and who the right connection was. And so it's been a pleasant surprise. Also a pleasant surprise is that the pandemic, when I talk about the companies that work in the test beds, and I think it's a concern for all three of us on the panel. They rely on investment, whether it's angels or bootstrapping, and there's some concern, at least in the first few months, how interested people would be in spending money. And I think the ease with which all these activities that we just mentioned in our answers to this question have been able to be carried on, we're still seeing money come in, and groups being active in the lab and making progress, when I think, back in March, we were all concerned like this might just shut down for months, years, whatever, and it ended up just being a month and a half.
Thank you. I expected a lot more doom and gloom. It's so nice to hear some positive things coming out of this. We agree. We've seen the same for our engagements and events, being able to tap speakers from around the world, or reach new audiences. So that has been the silver lining. So we did get one question in the RSVP form that I put into the chat here. It's a little long, so you can read it while I speak it. So what are some opportunities for partnerships and programs at UW with the new CAMSET building, in particular with the College of Built Environments on building integrated PV and energy storage, smart grid, and district energy resiliency? How can we leverage the campus as a test bed for these emerging energy solutions?
I think that's mine. So it's a great question, and I don't think we have all the answers for it yet. So the CAMSET project just received their developer proposals, and so we're not 100% sure what the building is going to look like. I can tell you from some of the planning work that we've done, we fully anticipate having renewables, at least solar and batteries, and incorporate into that building. And then West Campus as a whole, they're working on a whole wastewater treatment, storm runoff. There's going to be a whole new substation, and the intent is to do exactly what this question asks: is to have the programs on campus be a part of this, have the campus as a test beds, or as a test bed for the types of work that's going on here. We've already started doing that to some extent at the test beds, although not directly. And I think UW Solar has also been heavily involved in pretty much any new building that comes on, trying out new solar installations and solar technologies. I think the life sciences building actually has solar fins on it that both provide shade and produce energy on top of solar installations on the roof. So they're definitely doing innovative stuff, and there's opportunities for folks around the university to participate. Right now, my wish list, for our systems integration test bed, we are reliant on historical data. So, smart meters around campus. When we say campus as a test bed, it's really last week's campus as a test bed. And we've slowly gotten more buy-in from UW facilities to try to make that more of a real-time thing. And I think they're coming around to it. It's not an easy nut to crack. So yeah, I mean, I think I've answered that by not really saying much, but there will definitely be more to come on that, and how the building comes together. But it's expected to be very hands-on and very collaborative. So I'm sure there's a spot for the College of Built Environments and maybe even in helping out the design phase of it.
Very cool. That's exciting. Next question is and for anybody, what advice would you give to students in particular to get involved with clean tech and build collaborations early on in their career? You touched on students a little bit earlier, but is there any specific advice you would give them how to build a career in this collaborative world?
Well, I would certainly invite them to get engaged with our networking and our educational events. Because the UW is a member, all students at the UW would qualify for member pricing on any of our events. We may have to kind of work with you to get you a profile on our website so you can access that. But I've dropped our events calendar into the chat. And the majority of our learning series are going to be free for all members while we're completely virtual. And so it's a really ideal time for students to get engaged and start attending events. And then we're also working with the university to make sure we create some opportunity for students to do some writing to expand out some of the educational content on our website. So for students that are particularly wanting to get involved to that, they can reach out to me and we'll get you connected into that programming. But definitely get engaged, come to events, learn what's going on in the sector, be in the audience, volunteer when that's available, and meet people, because I think our members are definitely willing to talk to students and let you know what's going on out there. So that's my plug, but definitely it's a real opportunity to see what's happening in the market and learn about the ecosystem and the different accelerators and business development programming that's out there for you.
I just want to echo the events put on by the Cleantech Alliance, the breakfast series in particular. I dropped that specific link in there. I know a lot of our students really enjoyed that. And then I'm going to add in the chat a link to sign up for the Buerk Center for Entrepreneurship's newsletter. It goes out on Mondays. And so we'll promote the events that the Cleantech Alliance is offering, also the Testbeds. And so it's a lot of information, but it's kind of a catch-all for all things entrepreneurship, and then also highlighting the clean tech events.
Great, thank you.
And I will, I'll first of all, just second or third everything that was just said. I probably wouldn't have this job if I hadn't networked with the Cleantech Alliance first. So definitely check that out. If you have any entrepreneurial aspirations, the Buerk Center is a great place to start. So I'll plug Lauren as well, but then I'll also plug the the Clean Energy Institute. As I mentioned earlier, we have programs not just for scientists and engineers, but for policy people, tech due diligence. If you're interested in investing, we just brought on 2 students from the Foster MBA program to help with business development at the Testbeds, which is mostly startup discovery and those sorts of things. So plenty of opportunities to engage. Here's the sort of landing page for student opportunities at the Clean Energy Institute. Just put that in the chat.
Great.
And feel free to reach out to me as well.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to the next question that kind of ties into this a little bit. How does the clean energy ecosystem work to center considerations of equity and justice as the sector develops, such as training new workers, serving community needs, etc.?
Really important question and really important work. Multiple times a day, I have conversations with C-suite business leaders about equity and diversity within their field and within their space, from selecting speakers to make sure that our speaker panels look like America, to looking to where does the clean tech industry fall short? Where have they missed the mark? Where have historically women and BIPOC individuals been underrepresented? And it's a pervasive issue. The clean tech sector is essentially a middle-aged white male, and we know this. We know that STEM career graduation rates vary wildly for Blacks and non-Blacks. We know that women at the doctorate level are underrepresented in many fields. I was just chatting with a leader in one of our fusion company members, and he cites evidence that plasma physicists are the least diverse PhD in the clean tech field, and they know this, and they know they need to work on it. And so it's conversations that we have all the time. I've yet to find anyone in the sector that doesn't want to have those conversations. It doesn't want to find ways to move the needle. I'm pleased to say, to help support BIPOC and women and rural and any underadvantaged entrepreneur, we do have a new scholarship fund that exists for having, allowing entrepreneurs to access commercialization programming. And so we do have a modest but to be growing scholarship fund that would pay an entrepreneur's entry fee or participation fee, such as at our Innovation Showcase does have a presenting company fee to participate. And so we have a scholarship fund for those who need assistance accessing that kind of programming. So we've taken some baby steps as an alliance to put our money where our mouth is and say we do want to have diverse representation among entrepreneurs and within the community. But we know that that is just the tip of the iceberg in solving the challenge. So the sector is aware that diversity is an issue and wants to solve it. And just like climate change, it's not an easy problem.
Yeah, I think I definitely echo that sentiment, and it's we are a STEM operation, and it has been an old boys club, and I got my PhD in 2007, and they were talking about it back then, right? It's 13 years later, and I still see a lot of people that look like me. And I think we try to address it at the Testbeds through finding ways to support underserved communities. A couple of specific examples, whenever we write a grant, we look at workforce development aspects of the work that could go on, and that usually involves reaching out to local community colleges, because that's usually where the minority and underserved populations get a foot in the door, or they tend to be high percentage, those populations, and getting a way or establishing a way to get those students into the lab as soon as possible, establishing a pipeline or nurturing a pipeline into UW so they can take advantage of Research One grade facilities and education once they wrap up at the community colleges. I think besides clean energy, we're very active in additive manufacturing, so there is kind of a trade aspect to it, and getting people into the sector as introduced to the sector that way, and then giving them the opportunities from there. Also, we try to find programs that we can work with the state Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprises. So there's a great resource there. If you're considering careers or considering finding a vendor or a partner, I highly suggest checking that out. It's omwbe.wa.gov. I can throw that in the chat as well. But there's a lot of work to do. I know the Clean Energy Institute, beyond just what the Testbeds can do in our little niche, the Clean Energy Institute is also, I think, wrapping up a DEI study, and we'll be publishing a report soon on how they plan to seriously address this problem.
And there are some wins. I know the Cascadia Cleantech Accelerator, we've all talked about and referenced a few times, has a really good job of tracking their graduates through that program, and has statistics that they report on to the DOE and grant funders as far as BIPOC and women entrepreneurs at the board level or at the C-suite level in the companies. And the statistics there are encouraging. The needle is moving. There's research to look at in higher education on what universities are graduating Black and brown people with STEM degrees. And we do see that historically Black colleges are being more successful in helping Blacks in particular who declare a STEM major. They have a higher percentage graduation rate that don't change their majors. So there are lessons to be learned there, and there are success stories to find. I think the final thing that I'm very hopeful about with assisting our communities and coming together and in repairing racial and systemic inequities is that as we talk about implementing and commercializing clean tech systems, we know that we can move the needle for low-income communities and Black and brown communities by racing the pace at which we deploy batteries into our fleets, for instance. That UPS fleet truck goes home for the night, or your mail trucks go home, or your buses go back to the bus garage and the bus barns. Those tend to be parked in low-income communities. And if we can electrify those fleets, we can rapidly provide benefit into low-income communities. And these are things that I hear the state and business and utility leaders talking about regularly. Is it's very hard to get electric vehicle charging stations deployed throughout every community. But if we can start with fleets, we can make a difference in the low-income communities immediately. And those are things that our business leaders are clearly and keenly focused on. So the fact that there is awareness that there's disparity in the sector is translating into some wins, into some programming that we're going to see rolling out across the state. And that is encouraging.
And I'll just add on the kind of competition level, we've partnered with our sponsors like Earth Lab to create prizes that, not only call out, but call for equity and justice in, these ideas, and really getting students, students are already there, but getting students to really think about all of these different components at the idea level, so that, we don't end up where we are today, where we have companies that are now kind of trying to unpack and backstep and recreate, and incorporate equity and justice to their existing company, but trying to get it right from the start.
Great, thank you all. It looks like we have just a couple minutes left. Are there any final thoughts you want to share with this audience? I want to thank you all so much for your time here today.
I saw one other question pop up in the chat. Someone was asking about tidal energy, and I know that PNNL is working on wave energy, different distributed wind energies out at sea. And so I know there are advancements there. We certainly don't have time to dive into it today. Maritime blue is also a cluster sector here in the area that we collaborate and all are aware of and work with, that probably would be interesting to talk to if you want to focus on that particular topic. So yes, there are advancements. You could probably jump onto PNNL's website, whoever asked that question, looks like Pamela, or sign up for their news feed, and you might get some interesting things coming across your email then about that specific topic if you're interested.
Great, thank you so much, Mel. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We invite you all to join us every month for our Lunch and Learn, Collaborating Across Difference. Stay tuned to join our newsletter. Many of you already have, and we have a lot of events coming up in general about transdisciplinary work in environmental sectors. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day.